Good afternoon. I am Pastor Lydia, and I am here to share this week's Inside the Text with you. Before we get started, however, I would like to invite you into this moment to take a deep breath, to be centered and focused as we learn and explore a little bit about God's Word together in these moments. So if you can find a place where you're comfortable and you're seated or standing, whatever position you're in, just take a couple deep breaths in and out. Remembering that God is present with us in these moments and any moments of, and any and all moments of our life. Today we are looking at the gospel text for this coming Sunday, June 22nd, and that gospel text comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 8, and it's verses 26 through 39. And it's a fairly remarkable story, and memorable, and you'll probably recognize it. It's a healing story, but it's not just healing the blind man or a leper or someone who was paralyzed. This particular story deals with demons and possession and conversation around that. And I want to preface that up front because for some people you might be sensitive to this topic because there's a lot of different directions that church scholars and leaders have gone when it comes to this story. So I wanted to give that warning before we dive into it. But here we go. From the Gospel of Luke, chapter 8, starting with verse 26. Then Jesus and his disciples arrived at the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee. As he stepped out on land, a man of the city who had demons met him. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he did not live in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he fell down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many times it had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles, but he would not break the bonds and be driven by the demon into the wilds. Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. They begged him not to order them to go back into the abyss. Now there was a hillside. There on the hillside was a large herd of swine was feeding, and the demons begged Jesus to let them enter these, so he gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and drowned. When the swineherds saw what had happened, they ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then people came out to see what had happened, and when they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it told them how the one who had been possessed by demons had been healed. Then all the people of the surrounding country of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got into the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him. But Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." So he went away, proclaiming throughout the city how much Jesus had done for him. It's a known story and somewhat challenging story for a variety of reasons. And today, instead of jumping in deeply to my reflections, partly because this is Vacation Bible School Week, and we are all very busy in the most beautiful ways, partly because I find her words really powerful, I'm actually going to share some of the writing and reflection that Minister Candace Simpson has done in relation to this story. And she works for an organization called Enfleshed, which does a lot of worship resources and liturgy and poetry and study of Scripture. And she breaks down this story into 3 different ways of looking at it. And so we're going to explore these different ways, and the first is cosmic. So, again, this is commentary and scholarship written by Minister Candace Simpson. When you think of demons, what do you think of? What do they look like, and what do they do? Are they like the popular media depiction of demons? Small red beings on your shoulder whispering naughty things, contrasted with an angel whispering wholesome things? Hank Davis, writing for Psychology Today, points out the trouble with how demons and the devil show up in our language. This kind of devil-based theology includes an important but unstated message. When I'm a good person, you can attribute my good acts directly to me and my sterling character. But if I behave in horrible, irresponsible ways, just blame it on the devil, who is running the show. For Davis, blaming things on the devil or demons is a way of avoiding accountability. In many instances of celebrity apologies, for example, the apologizing party will say, "I don't know what came over me," or "I don't recognize myself here." While these apologies may not explicitly name the devil or demons, they require the speaker to engage logic of externalizing blame. But in the New Testament, demons are real. And they do make things happen. Jonathan Morgan writes in the Oxford Dictionary of the Christian Church, "The Gospels and Acts in particular depict demons as enemies of humankind, whose tactics include altering the mind, demeanor, and conduct of those they control, and causing physical ailments." In the epistles, demons are also mentioned, but not in terms of controlling or occupying a person. As time goes on in the life of the Christian church and community, local churches and organized denominations come to understand demons in new ways. Some iterations of Christianity prioritize the casting out of demons and hold specific services to this end. Morgan goes on to describe the change of public opinion about demons as some historic testimonies, eventually explained as mental illness or other disorders. As interpreters of the text, it is important for us to avoid conflating the presence of demons with a mental health diagnosis. Resisting ableism and sanism requires that all religious people, and especially religious leaders, must say more than "she needs to pray that away" or "that child has a wicked spirit on them." Certain behaviors and tendencies can be explained through a more holistic approach. Perhaps it is not that a child in our care is afflicted by a demon, but that they might be struggling to regulate as they move apartments for the 3rd time in as many years. What does it say about us that culturally inconvenient and warranted responses to stimuli are called demonic? In any case, demons are a way to describe some inexplicable phenomenon, and Jesus has certainly met a situation that defies explanation. Here, opposite Galilee, where Jesus is from, Jesus meets a man from the city of the Gerasenes. He is known to not wear clothes, and he lived in the tombs. Somehow, he recognizes Jesus, and even more, Jesus asks him his name. Each of us has a name. Whether we are given a name that has significance in our family of origin, or we choose a name ourselves, names are powerful. But when Jesus asks his name, he responds, Legion. The narrator editorializes, for many demons had entered him. We do not know if this is his real name or the name that the people call him in the community. Can you hear it? There goes old Legion. Careful, Legion is around. He's probably going to ask you for some money. Legion is always causing some trouble. What do you think it does to a person's spirit to be known as their condition? How might the constant reminder of one's strangeness to others impact their sense of identity? Here we have a case of chicken and egg. Which came first, the exclusion from community or the demonic possession? Professor of psychology and neuroscience Julian Holt-Lunstad argues that being connected to others socially is widely considered a fundamental human need, crucial to both well-being and survival. To add more challenge, the American Psychological Association notes that loneliness is not synonymous with chosen isolation or solitude. Rather, loneliness is defined by people's levels of satisfaction with their connectedness or their perceived social isolation. Being known as the man who lives not in a house but in the tombs and doesn't dress as others do can create a social isolation that shapes one's mental, spiritual, and physical health. How does one build a spiritual practice through such loneliness? Have seasons of loneliness shaped your concept of God? The second section is broken up into one called structural, and it continues here. Continuing the theme of life under imperial rule, this passage contains several context-specific references to authoritarian rule that would have been clearer to the people of that time. It's important to learn more about the time and place of the text. Chad Myers considers this vignette a political cartoon because it's so politically evocative and symbolic in its critique of Roman occupation. Even more, the text also echoes Isaiah's depiction of an idolatrous people. They live in tombs and spend nights in dark corners eating the meat of pigs and using unclean food. Isaiah 65, verse 4. We might also say that this diagnosis suggests captivity to the addictive, compulsive nature of life under imperial occupation. What today we call internalized oppression. This thought may push us to consider a question. Who is the sinner? The man or his society? The movie Sinners illuminates a popular interest in this very question. It also takes up concepts of the otherworldly. In this film, members of a small Mississippi town contend with the visitation of supernatural creatures they do not understand. Throughout the film, Ryan Coogler attempts to tell a story about race, Jim Crow, gender, sex, economic exploitation, and so much more. Viewers leave the film not so much afraid of vampires, but by the bloodlusting nature of white supremacy. In the film, we see how various kinds of people make a life in response to state control. Sharecropping, hustling, smuggling alcohol, and selling spiritual protection inside and outside of the Christian church are all ways people try to live given the conditions around them. By the end of the film, viewers try to answer the question, well, who was the sinner in this movie? At first, the town's local conjure woman, Annie, tries to make sense of these creatures. In her own specific estimation, she deduces they are either haints or vampires. In one scene, Annie stands at the threshold of the door to interrogate those she suspects have been turned into vampires. As the folklore goes, vampires cannot enter a house unless they have been invited. At the doorway, she continues to ask questions. Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. Every person in the juke joint turned safe house has a story. Some are on the run from mobs, others are dealing with the loss of children, all are under the rule of Jim Crow, which seems to be endless and impossible to escape. When a family member asks the nomadic twins what the difference between Chicago and Mississippi, they reply, "Chicago ain't nothing but Mississippi with tall buildings." Such a statement illuminates the omnipresence of Jim Crow's impact on Black people throughout the United States. It is ahistorical to suggest that Jim Crow and racial terror only visited Black people in the South. At the Chicago Reporter, Zachary Lader writes, Chicago was one of many, mostly northern cities where riots erupted during the Red Summer of 1919. These riots were in large part a white response to the country's changing demographics, as blacks moved north and soldiers returned home from World War I. In Sinners, twin brothers Smoke and Stack are veterans returning from World War I. Their absence is felt among romantic partners, family, friends, business partners, and general community members. Eventually, the audience sees that the trauma of war teaches the twins how to fight and disturbs their daily lives. War is ever present. It is mentioned explicitly, but it is more hauntingly mentioned when alluded to. It is present in the way hands tremble to light cigarettes, in the hustle to make money because the U.S. government did not make provisions for black veterans, and in the often forgotten history of how Chinese families found themselves in the Deep South. War impacts people across the entire globe and shapes folks' migratory patterns. War is yet another character in the movie, with just as much screen time as the human actors. "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. The word legion is a word to describe a host of soldiers. During the time of Augustus, it was used to describe a unit of soldiers both on foot and on horse by the thousands. Jesus asked this person what his issue is, and he said legion. He could have easily said the police or the 1033 program or military training exercises with our allies domestically and abroad. This person was afflicted to the point of chaotic living, and the only language they had to describe such a life is military language. Perhaps this person, nicknamed the Gerasene demoniac, was being poetic. As in, I got as many problems as the U.S. military command centers across the globe. Or perhaps he was being transparent, as in, my problem is the legion of military soldiers bothering me for my papers and keeping me from living a dignified life. In either case, the Gerasene demoniac's story is evidence that the state is shaping our realities more than we'd like to admit. And her last section of this scholarship is called interpersonal. After a series of dramatic events, the person formerly known as the Gerasene demoniac attempts to join Jesus' journey. He begged to be with him, but Jesus sent him away. In the New Testament, this specific word shows up to suggest intense asking. It's not a casual ask. It's desperate, nearly supplication-level asking. It's understandable. After all, this person has spent a significant portion of their life outside of local community rituals and life. He had lived such a life of cyclical exclusion that he has memories of having been bound by shackles and chains, only to break those restrictions and run into the wilderness. This man is in deep need of a place to rest. He may need a place to find himself or to learn who he is outside of the traumatic memories of chains. Jesus has some reputation of being a person among people, and this man is hungry for community. He prays that Jesus will allow him to follow, but Jesus sends him to his home to declare how much God has done for you. The Mark account of this story is even more pointed. Jesus says, "Go home to your own people." As he goes on a journey to tell the Decapolis what has happened, everyone was amazed. This person, known in the community as someone to shun and reject, is now able to tell his own story of Christ's healing in his life. He is now a credible messenger as he tells new audiences who Jesus actually is. It is also significant that he is in the Decapolis doing so. The Decapolis is a name for the 10 cities, which took shape between Herod's domination of the area and Rome's colonization of the eastern frontier. In the credible messenger mentoring model, people who shared life experiences from the same neighborhoods or marginalized communities with former gang or incarceration history serve as mentors, leveraging their own history of transformation to engage youth involved in the juvenile legal system and promote individual and community change. Julia Lesnick, about how critical relationships can serve as a promising life course health intervention. Participants testified. I have seen the path I was on, and the CMM program pulled me from a lot of things. They saved my life. They are committed to me even when I am not. The goal is to get participants focused. Mentors don't want to take the same path that they went through. Every time the conversation is to put yourself in a different situation, to change your mindset. If this person, formerly known as the Gerasene demoniac, went through the cities to tell what had happened to him, can you imagine how his testimony may have shaped people? One organization in New York City is trying to magnify these testimonials. In their own words, their mission is to support life-giving connections to one's own community. Our nation's judicial system is overly leaned upon to respond to the needs of and actions of youth, often pushing them deeper into the system and further away from those who can help. At Community Connections for Youth, we hold tight to the belief that what youth need most is nestled within their home communities. These are the people who know them, understand them, and possess the life experience to guide them through their adolescence and toward true self-discovery. We are an organization committing to advocating for the community to be the first response when things go wrong. CCFY trains community members to be credible messengers towards the aim of ending youth incarceration. At their Credible Messenger Boot Camp, persons with relevant and relatable life experience engage a 5-day training intensive for credible messengers, takes participants through a healing community building and educational process that further prepares them to facilitate dynamic spaces for youth. We don't follow the person formerly known as the Gerasene demoniac in his daily life. We do not know what his name actually is. We are simply introduced to him through his life circumstances. Even more challenging is the fact that his story seems to end as soon as it proves Christ's power. The narrator tends to tell the story as far as a person can be healed, but the person now holds a new truth. Not only am I invited to the community rituals and routines, I am trusted to tell that story to my own people. A word of caution, though. Within the Christian church, especially such narratives of healing and transformed living are often weaponized against marginalized persons. We rejoice when this man is no longer afflicted by the specific demons that violated his life and kept him bound. But the same logic is what conversion therapy programs are based on. Ex-gay or detransitioned believers use their testimonies to shame queer and trans people from living their authentic life. As we read this text, we should be critical about the kinds of in my former life testimonies we amplify as Christian believers. Are we being used in service of the oppressor, or are we telling stories to resist that oppression? I leave you with those thoughts and questions today, with this wonderful scholarly work. And I look forward to exploring this text and story a little bit more with you this coming Sunday, June 22nd.